The town of Grenton was ordinary by every measure. A quiet place tucked between hills and woods, where neighbors waved when they passed, and the loudest noise most nights was the hum of crickets outside bedroom windows. But one summer, something began that no one in Grenton could explain, and by the time the rest of the world noticed, the town was already breaking apart. It started with a single sleepless night. For the local mechanic, Harold, it was nothing unusual. He often tossed and turned in the summer heat, unable to find rest. But on that particular night, he didn't drift into sleep at all, not even for a moment. He watched the shadows move across his ceiling until the sun rose, never once closing his eyes. When morning came, he was groggy but assumed it was just bad luck. By the second night, he grew anxious. He drank warm milk, counted backwards, tried his old radio, even dosed himself with whiskey, but nothing worked. His mind stayed sharp, buzzing, awake. By the third night, his hands shook so badly at work that he dropped his tools. Customers noticed the dark rings forming under his eyes, but Harold only muttered, "Don't know what's gotten into me. Can't sleep, that's all." He wasn't alone. On the other side of town, little Emily Hargrove cried in her bed, begging her mother to make the bad dreams stop. Except Emily wasn't asleep. She hadn't been asleep for 2 nights straight. She said the shadows in her room moved even when she blinked, and the walls whispered when the lights went out. Her mother stayed with her, reading fairy tales until morning, but the girl's eyes never closed, never rested. By the end of the week, a pattern emerged. Families whispered about it in hushed tones at the diner, in the churchyard, at the gas station. Half the town was wide awake. People who had never struggled with sleep suddenly couldn't find rest, no matter what they tried. Coffee shops stayed open later, pharmacies sold out of sleeping pills, and yet no one seemed to drift into even the lightest dream. Sheriff Albright tried to calm the growing panic. "It's stress," he told a crowd at town hall. "Heat, nerves, maybe something going around. It'll pass." But even the sheriff's eyes were bloodshot, his words shaky from exhaustion. 2 weeks passed, and no one in Grenton had slept, not one. The effects were swift and brutal. Shopkeepers forgot to lock their stores at night. Teachers rambled nonsense in classrooms, their chalk falling from weak hands. Fights broke out at the grocery store over cans of soup. People began to see things, figures in the corner of their vision, whispers in the static of radios, shapes flickering in mirrors, and then came the first death. An elderly woman named Mrs. Connors collapsed in her kitchen. The coroner said her heart gave out, but her neighbors swore it was the exhaustion. They buried her in silence, no pastor, no choir, just a few muttered prayers. Everyone was too tired to grieve properly. After that, the fear grew. Some swore the town itself was cursed. Others claimed the government had poisoned their water. A few whispered about something older, something hidden in the woods that watched the town when the lights went out. No one could prove anything. But every night, when the sun dipped below the hills and shadows spilled through Grenton, one thing was certain. The town would not sleep. The storm outside had subsided into a soft drizzle, but within the cracked walls of Lena's home, silence pressed like a weight. She sat with her knees drawn to her chest, eyes stinging from the lack of sleep. Her neighbor Mrs. Calderon hadn't stopped pacing the street since yesterday, her bare feet leaving dark red smears on the pavement. Nobody questioned where the blood came from anymore. They were too exhausted to ask. Lena forced herself to the window. The air reeked of smoke and something sour, like spoiled meat. She spotted a figure on the opposite side of the road, Jacob, the schoolteacher. He had been awake like the rest of them, yet his body moved with a stiffness that was worse than fatigue. His head jerked unnaturally, almost puppet-like, his mouth twitching into a smile far too wide. Then came the whisper. It wasn't the storm. It wasn't her own voice. It came from the darkened corners of the room, layered, like a chorus of unseen throats chanting at once. Stay awake. Stay with us. Her heart seized. She stumbled back, clutching her ears, but the sound was inside her skull now. She rushed to her father's old journals, the ones he used to write during his studies of folklore. He had written about parasitic spirits, about things that fed not on flesh but on awareness itself. They do not want you to rest, his scrawled notes warned. *4 In sleep, they lose you. They starve when you dream. *A violent crash outside shook the fragile house. Lena peered out again to see Jacob's body convulsing in the rain. His face had split, skin peeling as if something was pushing outward from beneath. But no one around him reacted. The neighbors stood in the downpour, heads tilted up to the sky, muttering words she couldn't understand. They looked like a congregation awaiting a signal. Desperate, Lena grabbed her backpack. Inside she stuffed her father's journals, a half-empty water bottle, and the tiny vial of pills she had been saving, sleeping pills. She hadn't dared to try them yet. But maybe if she forced herself into sleep, she could escape whatever had the town in its grip. She set out into the street, moving quietly past her neighbors, who didn't even seem to notice her presence. Their eyes were glassy, pupils blown wide. The whispers followed her, urging her to stay awake, warning her of dangers in the dream world. She didn't believe them. She couldn't. At the edge of town stood the old bus station. Every timetable had long since stopped, but Lena pushed inside. The benches were coated in dust, and broken lights swung overhead. She curled up on one of the benches, clutching her bag. With shaking hands, she opened the vial and tipped 2 pills onto her tongue. Swallowing dry, she closed her eyes and begged for unconsciousness. The last thing she heard before her body gave in was the chorus of voices rising to a scream, "If you dream, you'll never come back." Darkness. Then silence, but when her eyes opened again, she wasn't in the bus station anymore. She was standing in the middle of the same town, but it looked wrong. The buildings were bent, melted, as if the world had been painted and left to drip. The people were there too, standing still, their mouths open but producing no sound. Only their eyes moved, following her every step, and on the horizon, she saw them. A row of tall, faceless figures, stretching endlessly, their forms rippling like smoke. They began to walk toward her, slow but steady, with hands outstretched. Lena realized with a chill that maybe the voices hadn't been lying. Maybe she hadn't escaped anything at all. Maybe she had gone exactly where they wanted her to go. The screams reached their peak when dawn painted the sky with a sickly red glow, as though the sun itself bled into the earth. In the middle of the town square, the remaining survivors huddled together, their eyes wide and veins bulging with the fury of sleeplessness. Every shadow seemed alive. Every gust of wind carried whispers. Elena stood among them, clutching her journal like it was the last piece of sanity left. She had pieced together fragments of the town's curse, the priest's failed exorcism, the pact with something that promised eternal life, and the terrible price it demanded. No one would ever rest. The children were the first to go quiet. They stopped screaming, their little eyes wide and staring. One by one, they tilted their heads back as if gazing at something high above. Then they began walking, single file, toward the forest at the edge of town. The adults, too far gone to resist, followed like puppets. Elena knew the forest was where it had all begun. She could almost feel it pulling at her bones too, but she bit her tongue until it bled, trying to hold on to her last scraps of will. Still, her feet carried her forward, as though the town itself commanded obedience. When they reached the clearing, there was no monster waiting, no demon, no shadow. Just a hollow circle of burned earth, as though a fire had raged there centuries ago. And then Elena understood, the curse was not something that could be fought. It was woven into the soil, into the roots, into the breath of the town itself. The people collapsed into the circle, writhing, but their eyes never closed. Their bodies weakened, but they would not sleep. Elena, shaking and desperate, raised her journal, tore out the last page, and wrote one final plea with the stub of her pencil. Asterisk, if you find this town, do not stay. Do not listen. Do not breathe too long. Leave before the night takes hold. Asterisk. Her vision blurred. Her hands stilled. And then her body joined the others in the circle, twitching, staring, never resting. The town fell silent, not with peace, but with a dreadful stillness. Its people did not die, nor did they live. They remained, wide awake, forever, and somewhere, far away, a traveler unfolded Elena's journal, his eyes scanning the warning written in frantic scrawl. Behind him, the bus driver yawned and asked if they should stop in the next town. The sign up ahead read, "Welcome to Greywick, a town that never sleeps."